Good to go.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the this emergency meeting, Friday, August 21st of the Public Safety Committee of the Albany Common Council. I will, for the record, we have committee members Ballerin, Hoey, Frederick, and Igo present. And in addition, we have council members Farrell, O'Brien, Farrell, O'Brien, Conti, Love present. Also, we have Deputy Chief Ed Donahue from Albany Police, Commissioner Jones from Recreation. We have the Mayor's Chief of Staff, David Gallen. If I miss anyone, I apologize. We have the Chair of the CPRB, Ms. Morris. Our City Auditor, Dr. Dorsey Pleers is also here, along with our staff, Michelle Andre, Senior Legislative Aide, our Clerk, Daniel Gillespie, and our Research Counsel, John Raphael Pichardo. Did I forget anyone? Anyone? Oh, Dr. Paul Miller from Green Tech High School. Thank you, sir. And Melanie Metzger from the library. Joe and Jimmy, everyone's throwing hands up. Joe and Jimmy, chair of ACPAC. Sorry about that. And so we kind of, obviously the impetus for this is the homicides. I mean, we've had 13 homicides, 90 plus folks shot. I hazard to guess at the number of actually confirmed shots fired events. We really, we had a meeting last year heading into the spring to try to stem the tide and come up with some strategies for dealing with gun violence from last year. And so most of the people in this group were a part of that previous group that was put together by Dr. Pleers when she was the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So, and the idea is to have a conversation, try to come up with some strategies. I mean, obviously the lion's share of this responsibility falls on the police department, but as a community, we have responsibility also in keeping ourselves and our community safe. Like most of the members here, I'm getting calls and emails and text messages about this great fear of crime. They are crimes, but gun violence. Folks don't want to let their kids leave far from home. They don't want to leave their houses. The fear is real, and their fear is confirmed by, deaths and incidents that we've had. So with that, what I want to do is, if any of the committee members want to make, a quick statement or comments on why we're here or why we're doing this, we'll feel free to do that. So any of the committee members care to comment? If you do, just throw your hand up. Okay. Because it's pretty obvious why we're here. With that, I think I'll start with the police. Well, actually, any other council members have any questions, comments, just leading into this? We're going to have the police department speak, and then kind of if folks want to ask questions, they can.
Yeah, Kelly, I have a question. So this is not
Council President.
Thank you. This is not about any legislation or anything. I'm trying to figure out what is the purpose. Is it to get what type? I don't understand what the purpose of. If we're not doing legislation, we're just hearing from the city administrator.
Right, and the police department about steps that have been taken and will be taken. I mean, as much as they can.
Okay, there's strategy.
We're strategies for really dealing with this, and the folks in the room are have in the past helped us out and are always there. This stopping the violence falls in everyone here's
Yep.
purview.
All right. I just wanted to make sure.
They're
All right.
concerned with it. So also Council Member Robinson has joined us along with Council Member Judy Bechet. So I will Deputy Chief Donahue, you want to speak for the police? You're muted.
You hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. On this Friday afternoon, I appreciate everybody coming together to help address some of the issues that we've been dealing with, that we've all been dealing with. At the police department here, some of the things that we've been doing. I'll start. I actually organized it for the interest of time. I'm gonna focus on the key points from patrol, from NEU, from investigations, and some of the other outreach initiatives we have going on. If there's any further questions, some things that I may not be able to answer, I have Lieutenant Joe McDade here from our neighborhood engagement unit. He deals with a lot of the outreach initiatives that we have here at the police department. I have Katie Clark, who is our anti-violence coordinator, and Officer Christopher English, who's one of our school resource officers. So he can answer any questions related to any of the programs involving the schools. So I'll start with some of the patrol initiatives that we have going on in reference to some of our GIVE details, which is the a grant funded from the state, some of our from our violence initiatives. That's what the GIVE details. So when you hear me refer to the GIVE details, for those of you who don't know, that's the gun involved violence initiative that we participate with New York State. So currently we have officers deployed, and they're deployed based on crime stats that are analyzed and compiled by our Crime Analysis Center, Capital Region Analysis Center, that is housed here at Albany PD, thankfully. So those officers are deployed to a certain area based on all that data, and hopefully with that visible presence of the patrol officers there, that'll curb some of the violence. And currently we have a new op order that was issued by Commander Gibson for patrol. The officers will be assigned to those areas of the violent crime, and there's a certain area based on all the data that was compiled. And there'll be high visibility, there'll be walking beats, and they'll also be in cars. We're moving away from them in static patrols, static just sitting in the corner. They're going to be moving around and highly visible. That is the objective with that detail. And the patrol officers, they've been very proactive lately. I know others think may think otherwise, but over the past 2 weeks, patrols had over 10 gun arrests. Recently, as a couple days ago, we had somebody call the police. They responded within seconds. They were able to come up with the vehicle of a person with a handgun in the car. They were able to successfully apprehend 2 individuals and recovered 2 handguns. And my belief is that they definitely stopped some further violence from occurring. So patrol's been very active in that regard. They're also working on a team policing initiative. This is something that Lieutenant McDade has been working on with NEU and has done an excellent job with, along with Commander Gibson. The idea of the team policing is basically to have the NEU officers work together with patrol officers to have a more visible presence, and to kind of to have every officer be that beat officer, not just the separate patrol officer, NEU officer. It's kind of a team approach, as the name suggests. So moving on to NEU, the NEU officers, they're also now getting involved more in some of the lower level investigations, if our CRAC or our information coordination unit, which is the units that look at the data and see where things are occurring, if they see an address that has a repeated call for service, whatever that may be, obviously it's coming up as an issue. Lieutenant McDade is having his officers assigned to that address to hopefully resolve the issue that's going on that address. They're also working on a new initiative that they recently started. I know yesterday, maybe even today, they did that, Pastors on Patrol, where they're teaming up with one of the pastors in the neighborhoods, and the officers are walking the neighborhood with the pastor. They're doing some supervisor-directed foot patrols, so that allows flexibility for the supervisors. So if they see an area that has an increase in gun violence or any other type of criminal activity, they can deploy foot patrols in those areas as needed. And then still working on our other initiatives, the LEAD program, PAL, Team Night, Do the Right Thing program, and things like that, which obviously help to help keep kids busy and hopefully out of trouble, which is the goal there, right? And then the trespass affidavit program, I know it was brought up in some of our past meetings with some of you, I think that took part of some of these past meetings here at the police department, some of the council members. I know that was brought up. We are back up and running and doing that, participating with the DA's office, who's a great partner with the trespass affidavit program. Moving on to investigations, which, so for those of you who don't know, my responsibilities is investigations and administrative services Bureau. That's what falls under my command, and Deputy Chief Hogan is NEU and patrol. So investigations, so far this year, we've had 12 homicides this year. 5 of them have been closed with arrests, and I anticipate some more arrests coming in the near future. 9 out of the 12 homicides we've had this year involved a gun. So there were homicides, death was caused by the handgun, and 3 of those were closed by arrest. So just to give you a quick highlight on that. So investigatively, what we're doing, we're increasing our collaboration between investigative units, whereas in the past we have our Children and Family Services unit that handles that end of the house, the criminal investigation unit, and the community response unit. We're now kind of morphing into one, so to speak, because of the because how busy everything is, and just to be able to hopefully get ahead of things and get the situation handled. So now we have a more collaborative approach between all of the investigative units. A lot of these investigations, whether it's a shooting investigation where an individual was shot or a homicide, we work those investigations the same. So just because someone didn't die doesn't mean that we don't put less attention to it. And that's also supported, I'll talk further about, is our GIVE program. So there's also some resources allocated to the detective division to help put some resources to those investigations, because we feel if there's someone that's shot, that obviously there could be some other violence that follows that. So we want to stay ahead of it and work those cases, whether or not they're cooperative or not, as if it was a homicide. So they're all equally important. So every shooting case is a priority, and we treat it as such. We work with our federal, state, and county and local agency partners. We have very good relationships with the FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshal Service, as well as state police, the Albany County Sheriff's Department, the DA's office, and other local agencies that are also seeing an increase in violence. So we sometimes see some crossover investigations. So we work very closely. We're constantly communicating with these other agencies, and even more so now, obviously, with all the violence going on, because Albany isn't alone with this increase in violence. This is happening across the state and across the country. So it's imperative that we communicate and work together with other agencies, and that's what we've been doing. And we're going to continue to do, and we find some success with that. We're doing more reviews. We're doing more frequent investigative reviews of our shootings. Internally, we call them shooting reviews. And what we do in those is we go through each case from very basic all the way up, the whole entire case. And we do that to make sure we're not missing anything, to see if there's any connections, to get everybody in the room, and make sure we're not missing any other opportunities to solve the case or to prevent further violence, or whatever other things we can come up with. But it's a collaborative approach. We're going to start doing that more often to make sure that nothing is missed, and that we can stay ahead of things and come to successful conclusions and hopefully prevent further violence. We still have the void list, going. That's been going on for a while. We found it to be very effective. That is a list put together of individuals that, and it's based on a scientific it's based on a scientific approach as far as how that list is put together. But it's the violent offender uh, identification directive. Sorry, I just had a little, it's late on Friday here. But so we identify individuals that based on research, it's put into kind of like an equation where we identify the most at-risk individuals that may be involved in gun crime. So we still have detectives working on that. We're increasing our probation visits in conjunction with our detective division. They're going out, checking on probationers. Obviously with COVID, that's been difficult, but we're back up and running on that. And in fact, they've been great to be able to get back with that. We've recently done about 289 over the past month, I believe, 289 attempted contacts with probationers. And 70 of those out of the 289 we've actually made contact with. Parole, another one of our partners. I forgot to mention them up top, but probation and parole. Parole is also, they are still tied up a little bit with some of the COVID restrictions. However, they are still, whenever we need assistance from them, they're definitely there to help out. And then we also have our camera project, our citywide camera project that we've been working on. That's been a great asset to have. We put them in our busy intersections and busy areas, and they've been very beneficial in assisting us with investigations. So that's been another thing that we worked on this year, and that we're applying to the situation to help quell the crime. So going back to the give that I spoke about above, so I don't know who is or who isn't familiar with give, so forgive me if I'm going into too much detail, but there's different components of give. And the ones that I was referring to up top are the hotspot policing initiative and the focused deterrence. And the hotspot is basically what I explained with the op order, where we find areas that are quote unquote hotspots. So they're areas that have a lot of gun violence that we've discovered that are a problem, a lot of gun violence. So we deploy resources there. And focused deterrence is is basically those visits with probation and parole. So part of the GIVE initiative is also our GVI, group involved violence initiatives. That's been difficult to do because of COVID and the restrictions with COVID. We're looking for ways to participate with that again with the national network, whether we can use a virtual, like a Zoom. We're looking at other jurisdictions. I believe Newburgh is the one that they've come up with some very, very creative ideas using Zoom and using some other platforms. So we're looking at that. It's pretty labor intensive to get that going, but we're looking at it and we're going to see if it's a possibility, and we're going to explore that and execute it if it's something that we feel is doable. And the custom notifications, those are the notifications where we find people that may be at risk to be involved in violence, and we send some of our outreach officers to them to discuss, either give them services or just have a conversation with them. We started that back up in July. Obviously, COVID again hampered that effort, but we've been able to overcome that, and now we're successfully implementing that. And we have many reentry forums that we do. Katie Clark is one that generally administers those with her staff. And because of COVID, they've been canceled as well. So we're going to look at them and see if there's anything we can do in that regard to maybe help out with some of the folks that are leaving the facilities and re-entering in the neighborhoods, to give them the resources they need. And then last but not least, SNUG is also part of this initiative, and SNUG has gone through some changes where now they have social workers deployed in the hospital. So we're working with that and seeing how that's going to work out. But that is a good thing. And so we maintain our communications with SNUG. Anytime there's a shooting, they're notified, and they've been actively involved. And some other outreach initiatives we have are with our school resource officer. Like I said, Officer Chris English is here. They've been doing, him and his other resource officers that he works with, they're doing welfare checks on kids, now that school was closed, obviously with COVID, and we'll see what happens moving forward, but they're checking on these kids, some of the kids that they feel that may need a little extra resources. So they've been out proactively doing that. They have a presence at the city pools and the city parks. They've been helping out with the pastors on patrol, as I spoke of, and they're teaming up the school resource officers as well as the track officers to reach and connect officers. You know, Nate Pelton and Lawan Cancer, they're teaming up with NEU officers, and they're riding bikes, and they're helping out and what they can in that regard, as well as prevention services. We started a cadet program. Katie Clark's been working on that as well. The cadet program, we feel that'll assist with recruitment and help. Again, that also helps with our anti-violence because, you know, we're getting out there. It's positive things that we're putting out there, and it helps with recruitment. Hopefully, we can recruit some individuals from within the city that can help with some of our challenges that we're dealing with here. And like I said, and speaking of challenges, I think it's fair to bring some of those challenges up because it's a real thing. You know, COVID-19 obviously was a big challenge to everybody, but specifically to the police department, it was a big challenge, as well as some of the unrest and all the other changes that were going on. So being able to navigate that, as well as low staffing, you know, it's been a challenge, but you know, we're working through it, we're persevering, and we're hopeful that maybe some of you have some ideas to bring to the table that would help us out with some of these challenges, because at the end of the day, you know, we got to overcome these things, and you know, we got to improve. So and with that, you know, that's all I have. Kelly, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'd also like to recognize Ava Avery from the Government Law Center. She's in the room also.
Thank you.
And so since
thank you.
Since most of the stuff falls under APD, I want to hear from, you know, both Commissioner Jones, like Dr. Miller, on any ideas you have on, you know, working on this issue that we're having. But I do have a couple of questions. I want to ask a question or two, and then I'd like to allow some of the council members to ask a couple of questions of APD also. So I'll ask my two, and then we'll kind of skip around, ask, and then we'll move on and try to get input from other folks. But so for me, I'm trying to. I mean, the ultimate question is, what can we do to support you? But first question is, how many confirmed shots fired events have we had in the city? You're still muted, Chief. You're muted.
Sorry, my fingers aren't working right now. It's right around a little over 120. I'll get the exact number in a second here. 120.
Okay, and again, the question thing is, for my part in this is we need to know, if we're going to know where we're going, we need to know where we're at and where we're coming from. That's why I'm asking. And my second question now, and with this, is the ages of the perpetrators and victims. What kind of ages are we seeing there? Is it young kids? Is it, you know, teenagers? What are we getting there?
So the exact numbers I have in front of me now, I'm sorry. So 179, I was off by a little bit. 179 confirmed. And the ages, they vary. So ages you're talking about are the victims. We've had, you know,
both victims and perpetrators.
Yeah. So
victims first, roughly, just an average.
Yeah. So I mean, the victims, we've had them as young as Cordell Dent was last year. So as young as 10. This year, I'd say as young as 10 and up to in the late 60s, almost 70. It's a wide range. Perpetrators, I could collect that data, but that's also probably teens, mid to late teens to early 20s predominantly, but we do have some older ones as well in there. I can get all that exact data. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Okay. So committee members, we're going to try to do a 2-question deal here. I can't see that anyone's got their hands raised or one. Okay, Ms. Frederick.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Donahue. So my question's coming from
just wanting to ensure that our neighborhoods are going to get what they need going forward. So, for example, the shooting that took place this week on Moore Street, after that, I did go out with my beat officer and we walked door to door to check in on the neighborhood. And during that walk, as well as after the fact and going into today, I've received some feedback that that neighborhood, they have seen a big increase in police presence, but prior to the homicide, they saw bare minimal to no police presence in their neighborhood. So you did say that there's going to be increased visibility. They have acknowledged that, but I just want to make sure in terms of like timing, do we foresee that visibility continuing on, or is this going to, I guess, is this going to continue to have visibility so that the neighborhood sees that you're out there and you're active?
It's going to continue. And some of the challenges we had prior to this was just, it was so it would move so much. But so that's why when I referred to the NEU supervisors being able to change the beats around and they're supervisor initiated, they'll have a little bit more flexibility to move those beats and those officers around faster. So we'll have that. So if we need to see like a quick change in an area, we can quickly deploy those officers, and then we can adjust some of our other bigger op orders as well. But yes, Moore Street and any other street that sees an activity such as that, you will see an increased police presence.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other, Mr. Igo? You're muted, sir.
Yes, Chief, thank you for being here. And it's almost like deja vu. We've had Brian Hogan in, we had Chief last week, and Chief was sounding very optimistic that according to the data that was coming in, okay, things were looking better. It's lower than it was last year, lower than what it normally is this time of year. And I have heard some new things tonight, and I hope they're working, but for the last 3 weeks, I haven't seen much progress. And I hope what you're telling me tonight helps a bit and noticeably, and that's what I'm hearing from my constituents uptown. I can't imagine the poor people that are living in this neighborhood, what they're hearing from. And they're living in fear. And I think one of the things we have to do, wasn't really mentioned, I wish DJ was on here tonight, but we've heard how we have to get some things going for these kids to do. It's not out there. One thing I would love to see, and I know it's not possible now, I think one of the biggest assets the city of Albany ever had was the YMCA on Washington Avenue. You had teen night basketball and this and that. But besides that, you had friendships that grew. I was a member there 35 years. I made friends and still friends with people that I played hoop with for years. We have to make something happen between these younger kids, okay? So that this thing doesn't just keep growing. We have to think of the future as much as we are giving so much concentration on this right now. And the other thing the chief talked about last night was our, the great intelligence we were getting. And I know he meant the FBI and ATF and this and that. But, I don't, you tell me where it's helping us. It seems to maybe help after the fact, but not before the fact of what's going to pop up. So that's all I have to say, So thank you for being here, Chief. Stay on top of it. I know you got some good guys working on it. Joe Day, Daryl coming in on it now. I pray for the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I'm gonna have to ask that folks use the virtual raising the hand because I'm not picking up on all of this stuff. So, but I'm trying to get council members first. So we'll go. I got a lot of stuff going on here. Miss Love, did you have your hand up? Okay, Mr. Conti.
Yeah, I just want a clarification. When we're talking about confirmed shots fired or number of homicides, the time frame we're talking about is always year to date, or is it a different time frame?
Year to date, so for 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Got it.
Next on committee members would be Tom Hoey.
Hello, Chief. Thanks for being here. You know, if you're an alcoholic, you got to admit you have a problem. We have a problem, and it's not going down too good. As Councilman Igo said, I'm getting calls left and right. I'm getting calls from people downstate saying, what's going on in Albany? Are you in danger? Where do you live? People hear Albany and the shots fired. We have the governor upset about it. We got a real problem that we really need to do something about. I have a concern that, you know, where is the union with our officers? I know Officer McGee's been on complaining about certain things. Maybe he should be at this meeting tonight to get his input. But going around and having our officers without a contract for years now, and people leaving left and right, we're losing our neighborhood officers are leaving. They're retiring. And this just cannot continue on. And we know that good staffing and having a presence in all of the city is super important. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Can we get a contract for these guys? They're putting their lives on the line. What's going on? And the second part, Councilman Johnson brought up at our meeting, we don't have any type of community centers or anything for our kids to play, to enjoy. Yes, we have COVID, but that's reality now. We got to deal with it. And it might be here for another 2-3 years. We need to do something now. And this just cannot, this violence is just going to cascade and get worse and worse. We need to do something. So I'm throwing a lot at you. I'm annoyed. I wish I could do something. I'll let you know there was a big party down the street from me. I went and talked to the people, worked with the police. We were able to get it broke up and calm the neighbors down. But, you know, we all need to work together and try to figure out a way to solve these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. So to answer your first question about the contract, that's something I can't even, I have no involvement really in that, unfortunately. That's a union issue right now. They have a legal issue that they're dealing with, and until that's resolved, the city can't negotiate with the officers or the union. So that's out of my wheelhouse. It is unfortunate because 100% they need a current contract, but there's not, that's completely out of our power. Even the Chief Hawkins, it's out of all of our power. As far as I agree 100% with the activities for the kids. So we're open up to suggestions. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things I guess that could be that we could do. And if everybody puts their heads together, we can maybe come up with some solutions. But you know, that goes beyond the police department as well. You know, but we're open. You know, to any suggestions and if any partnerships that we can come up with to help with that.
So I want to have Council President Ellis, I believe he has something. And then Mr. Pichardo, I'll have you manage the users from here on out, okay?
Yes, thank you. I have two questions, Deputy Chief Donahue. The first one is, you mentioned the two handguns that we, you know, arrested people, potentially stopping the crime. Do we know the people we arrested, were they the owners of those handguns? And do we know where they came from?
So in that incident there, no, they were not the owners of the handguns. At least one of them was a juvenile.
Okay.
We do trace, though, anytime we recover a handgun, we do trace back with with the ATF, with their assistance, we trace back the origins of those handguns the best we can.
And have we gotten a trace of where they came from, or were they family members, or were they just stolen, or?
We haven't gotten that information yet. Oh. It usually takes a little time to get that information, but we haven't gotten it yet.
Oh, thank you. And another, our camera video, could you tell me, the number that we might have, the number of people we've arrested because of our camera video when it comes to gun violence, the number of arrests we've been able to make because of those cameras, being able to view those cameras and then follow up and make a substantial arrest?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you there's one homicide in particular, one in Arbor Hill, that because of that camera, it captured the whole entire incident. And we've had a couple others this year that because of the placement of those cameras, and I actually credit Commander Foley, Detective Commander Foley, for his placement of those cameras, because he used the data, he used, all the recent data and violence that happened in those areas, and he placed those cameras strategically and had them positioned in a way. I mean, the one caught the homicide completely on it. So they're very successful. So this year alone, I can say off the top of my head, there's been over 2 homicides, probably even more, that were captured on those cameras. And that homicide that I'm mentioning, in particular, an arrest may not, I don't think it's been made yet, but we have the person identified, and arrest will be made shortly.
Thank you. And one more, I think you mentioned the LEAD program. Are those, who are those reports given to about the program, and what is it doing? And from the council standpoint, we need to know, like, we have this program, so is it functioning, or what's the report on that program?
Yep. So I'm going to turn that one over to Lieutenant McDade, and I'll let him speak on the LEAD program for you. Go, Lieutenant.
Hi, everybody. Council President Ellis. So the LEAD program, for some of you that don't know it, it's a law enforcement assisted diversion program. Individuals that are arrested for low-level offenses, that have mental health issues, they're homeless or addicted to drugs or alcohol, they could be diverted and not actually formally charged into this diversion program. And as long as they follow some of the protocols with the social workers or the case managers, that charge is never resurrected. Recently, the LEAD officers, we have a LEAD committee in the City of Albany Police Department. I'm actually meeting with them often, and we're working together. The Neighborhood Engagement Unit is working hand in hand with LEAD officers now, going out in the officers' individual respective beats and diverting people who are problems in their beats. And hopefully these diversion tactics can, one, get rid of the problem and help the person become, better, healthier, get a home to live in, or that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you, Chief, for being here this evening. So my question, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. My question revolves more around the GIVE funding. Now, you said that there's 2 evidence-based strategies that are predominantly being employed, which is the hotspot policing and also the focused deterrence. How, in your assessment, how effective has those strategies been, and how do you measure the effectiveness of those strategies?
So we complete regular reports that we hand over to the state on a quarterly basis. And up until the recent challenges, COVID, namely the first, it's been very successful. And I think you can measure that with the numbers that we're seeing around the state with gun violence. It was down. If you look at the average, it was at a low. It was definitely at a low. And then come to March, COVID hits, and obviously all the challenges with that. And I think that's an anomaly because everybody's shot up because of the lack of contact, the lack of the ability to appropriately implement some of these strategies, because we couldn't go out there and have contact with people. So we saw our first big jump in March, and then it escalated from there. So getting back to your question on the success of it, and I think up until March is a reasonable measure to use, and it was definitely successful because our gun crime numbers were good up until then. And then now, from March till now, we saw that jump because of the various challenges that we had. So I don't think you could say, it would be fair to say that the GIVE program is not working because, all these other challenges. So I think it's definitely successful. And in my personal assessment, I think it's very successful. It's data driven. There's a lot of research behind it, a lot of resources behind it that the state provides. And it also, it allows for a collaboration, more of a collaboration. So we work with John Jay College, with Ceasefire, which is all the group violence initiatives through John Jay, where we do the call-ins. So it's like a layered approach where you have our enforcement and we have our preventative programs. So I think it's very effective, and also SNUG is part of that. So I think it's a very effective program, and I think that you know, it's something we should keep around and continue. You know, these challenges though this is what we have to deal with now. The COVID and all the recent challenges that we're dealing with. We have to figure out a way to find a path through all that to find success.
Okay. Okay, and so when you were saying that it's successful, when you talk about the hotspot policing, where you are identifying the areas where violent crime is more prevalent, for areas such as you know, West Hill, it still remains an issue. So how successful do you believe those strategies are in eliminating, you know, the gun violence in an area such as West Hill? And is it time to look at some other strategies? And I know that one of the other strategies is environmental design, enhancements to environmental design. One of the things when you look at the areas where the violence is most prevalent, they're very accessible by the highway system. So someone can commit a murder on First and Quail, drive all the way down First and be on the highway in no time. So how are we looking at those type of things as well to for possible violence reduction or prevention?
Yes, that's also part of the GIVE program. This cycle, we're not funded for that, but our officers are trained in CEPTED, and we use that approach, whether it's the trimming trees, create lighting, some of the other designs, the roadway designs, things that like you mentioned. So we do use that as well.
Okay. And so kind of back to my other question about the hotspot and being West Hill, how would you assess that in that context of how successful is the hotspot policing, and, you know, where West Hill is still area of our city that has the most crime?
Yeah, I think that policing strategy is effective because it's based, again, I think it's driven by data. So we are going where the crime's occurring. The community is calling us there. So from a policing standpoint, it's effective. I think maybe to get to your point, we need to have more collaboration to prevent the kids from getting to that point. Because, you know, we do the best, we can only do so much as a police department. You know, we're responding to shootings and responding to activity and crimes. But if getting back to some of the other points made, if we can prevent the kids, the individuals from doing this in the first place, then I think that leads to success. So I think the strategy is good because it's kept it's kept resources where they need to be, and it's provided us with resources so we can allocate those resources where they need to be. But it's not a police department only approach. So I think we need to look at a number of things, like a lot of things that were brought up today, to come up with the solutions.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Miller?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank everyone for being here. I think this is good dialogue. I just wanted a couple thoughts and a couple questions. I think I just want to know if we're really identifying what the true issues are. And some of the issues that, that seem to be coming to fruition are a few things. I think people have already said that COVID has been a huge issue because people are bored, they have nothing to do, they're stuck in small spaces without, whether they're not working, there's not a lot of outlets going on. So it's creating other issues. So, and I think overall, how do we create outlets? How do we create more opportunities? How do we do things that are more proactive instead of reactive? I think that's one thought. And I think if we could put our heads together and be more proactive instead of reactive, I think that's great. I think the reactive is necessary. The policing is obviously necessary. We need to get the guns off the street. We need to do everything that you guys are doing. But I think there needs to be more, we have to take a proactive stance. And with that being said, and just thinking this through, based on the previous data I've seen, I haven't seen any recent, but previous data, and even in line with keeping my ears to the street some, most of the shootings that are occurring are young Black men. So, right, so if we all say out of the majority of the shootings, they're young Black men, on top of them being young Black men, most of them, and again, if I'm wrong, please correct me, are in the age group between 21 and 34. There's some that are older, some that are younger, but the majority are between 21 and 34. So that they are young men who are out of school already and who aren't necessarily kids anymore, but these are adults who have fallen through the cracks and need some additional supports and need some help. So, I mean, if we could look at and really target that age group, that area, to find a way to place the supports and kind of retrain some of the community's ways of thinking and doing things, that may be an opportunity for us. And even though these are 21 to 34-year-olds, also a lot of what I'm hearing where this is coming from, and you know, I'm not from here, but you know, I've lived here for 9 years now, is the uptown downtown issues. So the uptown downtown issues are still happening and occurring, and these are grown behind men that this is occurring with, and it's happening with little kids, and it's happening with grown men. It happens with older, and there's people arguing over 2.5 miles of real estate that nobody owns. So until we can do something to change this mentality where that's a necessary argument, we're going to be spinning our tails, because people are, they're standing up for something, and for what? You know, and don't really necessarily even understand what they're standing up for. They're standing up because their uncle stood up for it and somebody down the line. So I think until we really address some of these things that are really the cause issues, and the group that we're really having the issues with, and putting these proactive things in place, I think we're going to keep spinning our wheels and spinning and chasing our tail. So, you know, and I'm willing to help and be part of the solution as well. But I think we have to just start having some real talk and saying what it really is, and leave the fluff out of it, is my personal opinion. But I'm willing to help. Let's put our heads together and come up with some proactive items. And how do we change some mindsets here? Because the uptown downtown is absolutely, no offense to anybody, but it's absolutely ridiculous to me. It doesn't make any sense when it's 2.5 miles apart from each other. You could throw a rock and be on the other side of Albany.
Thank you for that, Dr. Miller.
I think we were calling on Councilmember Love next.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Dr. Miller. You hit the nail right on the head. I want to go back to the Chief. Chief, I want to know and I know you said probation and parole is involved with this. So how are you monitoring, and how successful is it when you pick up the 15, 16, and 17 and 18-year-old? They get released to their parents. Some of them are back on the street. And again, I know you said parole and probation is involved with some of these things, but how is that being monitored, and how successful is it?
So you're being monitored as far as our probation and parole initiatives. And we monitor that along with our GIVE strategy. We monitor all those numbers. So anytime we go out and check on a probationer or a parolee, we monitor all those outputs, and they're kept track of. I think you're talking about two separate things. I think you're also talking about, are you talking about the arrest of the kid?
Correct.
So yeah, that is another challenge. I don't know if I want to get into that tonight, but it is another challenge. So some of the changes in the laws are definitely a challenge for us, because in the past we're able to arrest an individual who may be causing problems, and they would get them off the street for a period of time. And now we're not able to do that. And that was part of our strategy, because oftentimes there's a very small percentage of these people that are really violent, that they're trigger pullers, right? So if we can eliminate them from the equation, it's always very helpful, and we're successful with that. So now with some of the new things that we're all adjusting to, it's making it more difficult. So that's something that we're tracking, and we're just adjusting. But it isn't, sometimes just to be perfectly frank, these individuals are being arrested and they're going right back out in the street, and that's just the way the laws are. So that's really something that we just have to adjust to and overcome. One of the solutions is sometimes we're able to put GPS and use GPS tracking on these individuals. But I don't know if that's a long-term solution, but it's definitely a challenge.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Danielle Hilly.
Hi. So I have a clarification, which I guess is not really a question, but you said that 3 of the closed arrests three of the homicides were closed by arrest. Is that 3 of the 12 total, or 3 of the 9 gun violence ones?
So out of the homicides for this year, 5 were closed by arrests. The number 3 you're getting from, yes, I'm sorry. So 9 of the homicides were gun-related homicides. So some of the other homicides, the death was caused by something other than a firearm, right? So 9 out of the 12 homicides were firearm caused or related. And out of those 9, 3 of those were closed by arrest.
So out of the remaining 3 homicides, 2 of those are closed as well.
So there's 5 total. That are closed by arrest. 3 of the 5 are the gun-related ones that were closed. So out of the gun ones, there's 6 open.
Okay.
And several of those we're progressing on those.
How many people have actually been shot?
Roughly 97. Actually 99. 99 as of.
99. And I just want to piggyback off of what Dr. Miller said. I hear that there's the issue with the bail reform and stuff like that. What steps, what other steps can the police department take that do not require arrest and holding in a county jail? Like, there's got to be some other proactive means, maybe gathering together all of the different initiatives that are working towards gun violence and having some kind of a regular meeting with them, an actual involved advisory committee. I'd like to see that there are involved citizens on these tasks, like on these committees, like the lead and the stuff like that, so that we can start getting reports back, and somebody that's actually there, that's not just police department. I agree, this is gonna have to get way more proactive than reactive, because reactive is just picking bodies up. So I would like to see how the police department can adjust in a proactive manner.
Okay. So you're asking me I'm sorry, are you asking me what things we could do to adjust in more of a proactive manner, or is that just a statement, Danielle? Sorry.
So it's a little bit of both. It's a I'm reinforcing what Dr. Miller said, that it's important that we be proactive, but also too, what other steps can you take if the ability to arrest and hold some of these individuals has been taken away? What can be done in replacement for it so that it's proactive? Realistically, arresting them and holding them in county jail is reactive. The person's already been shot. So what other steps, how can the police department be more proactive, and how can the police department include active community members for assistance? Because there are a lot of people out there that are working on these issues, and I don't see any reason why the police department can't be the cohesive and also be the proactive leader at the same time.
Yeah, so we currently do, and like I said, with COVID, a lot of stuff is slowed down because of the different issues surrounding COVID. But we have the MERS form, so individuals that are getting reacclimated, coming out of facilities, that provides them services and guidance to basically reentry into back into the neighborhood. So we do those. We have SNUG. We have prevention services, like I spoke of, that they go out and make contact with some of these individuals, some of these high-risk individuals. And we also do, the ceasefire program that I mentioned, that program out of John Jay College. We do that, and that's where the community can also come in and participate when we do those. When we call in all those individuals, and that message is presented by the chief of police, the DA, the federal prosecutor, community members. Everybody's welcome to those, to come in there. And actually, it's encouraged, because when you have these individuals who are involved in gun violence sitting there, and it's very powerful when you go to these and you hear these people speak. And one of the speakers, every time I've been to them, she spoke, is a mother who lost her son to gun violence. And it's very powerful listening to that. And we've had some positive results from that. That we haven't had a call in several months because of the COVID, but that's getting to your point. That's one of the strategies that we could build upon, and maybe do things like that, have a community forum like that, where when we're doing those ceasefire, when we're doing those call-ins, where you guys can all participate. And then we also, at the end of the forum, everyone sits down and we provide food, and usually it's good food, and you sit down and everybody eats and talks, and and it's a positive thing. So that's probably something we already have in place that goes right to your point, as well as the preventive services efforts that we have and other programs that we already have. But just being real frank with you, some of these, there's very few people that are actually violent shooters. You got to be pretty violent to pick up a gun and fire it at somebody else. And so there is that police strategy where we still have to. Some of these people are just people that they have to be removed from the situation. So I think there's that small percentage there that we have to be able to address. And then everybody else, these other programs are excellent for, and I think we could reach them. And I think that's where we would get our biggest success.
I think Councilmember Johnson has had his hand up for a while and has a question.
Thank you. So, Chief, pardon me if you've already answered this question. I jumped on a little bit late, but what is the communication like between the Chief of Troy and the Chief of Schenectady, as far as the police departments, being that the information that we're hearing is it is uptown and downtown, but I'm also hearing it's other parts as well.
Yep, we communicate regularly, and personally I do as well, with the chiefs and the command staff of both Troy, Schenectady, we talk on a regular basis. And there is some overlap with Troy, a little bit with Schenectady, with some of our residents going over there, and some of their residents coming over here. So we talk on a regular basis and deconflict and work together. It's excellent.
And I just wanted to follow up on Councilman Robertson's point, because I just want to say it a little bit different about the potential of changing some of the directions of the streets that feed to the highway and leading towards it. I think if it wasn't so easy for people to jump off that highway and make pretty much a loop, I think that would be a deterrent.
Okay.
And that came from the neighborhood. That was suggested by someone from the neighborhood, and I shared that with the chief, okay, a while ago.
That's definitely something we could look at. That would involve getting probably some traffic studies done and things like that. But it's definitely something we could look at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eva Bass.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yep, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi, how are you? So I did put some things in the chat, and I appreciate everybody. They did touch on some of the things, but I want to elaborate on some of the issues that were brought up, which were, you know, the relationship with the other cities, space programming, and our collaborations. My question is, how are we proactively collaborating with community leaders and nonprofits or groups who actually impact the direct family setting and I don't want to just say just the I don't know what you guys call the people who were shooting or involved in the acts, but how are we doing preventative services centered around trauma-informed care besides depending on SNUG and their resources?
So we have our prevention services unit here. We also participated with Lisa Good in Urban Grief, and she was part of the Give program before. And now she's attached to another state agency. So we still work with Lisa. So you know, we use her as a resource as well. So if so any trauma response, anybody involved in any type of trauma, we use her expertise and resources, as well as the SNUG resources. So there's a lot of social work and psychological resources out there between Lisa, SNUG, victim services, prevention services, and I'm missing, I think I'm missing. We also were in discussions with another individual who is a nurse, and she wants to potentially and, you know, go out in the community and help out with some of the issues as well, with some of the aftercare with individuals that are shot. So that's still in infancy stages, but so we're always working and looking for other resources to help out.
Okay, thank you. So my next question would be, is there room and opportunity for more collaboration and building on the capacity for that work?
There always is. You know, we're always willing to listen to, you know, whoever's, you know, wants to bring some idea to the table. You know, Chief's really good about letting people come in here and hearing him out. That's why he's in meetings all day. So he's good like that. So if anybody has any ideas, just bring them to our attention, and we're happy to listen to them.
Okay, thank you. And then secondly, I believe, and through my outreach and conversations in the community, one of the biggest boundaries that we see are access to jobs. Now, although we do have a high concentration of jobs available in the city of Albany, especially before COVID-19, there's a boundary with a certain population of people where they're not able to get identification so they can sustain employment, and they are not able to connect to get properly service connected. Is that somewhere in the realm of your department where we can probably enhance or probably create some initiatives to increase the impact in the community?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we work with Trinity quite often. Now we also talked about, I brought up our cadet program there, which is offering employment to individuals from the city here. So again, we're always willing to listen to ideas and work with any partnerships that you know, that'll help the cause, to help make things better.
All right, thank you very much.
Councilmember Frederick.
I'm good, thank you. Eva's question was my question about the community organizations.
Councilmember Igo.
I haven't heard any discussion at all about the drug issue. Is this part of the equation with the crime going on, Chief?
You know, I can't definitively say. I mean, drugs oftentimes are part of some of the violence that we see. Some of the homicides that we've seen, the shootings, have definitely been personal, but I can't definitively say on exactly how many. But there's definitely on some of these. I think it's fair to say that there would be some type of drug nexus on some of them.
I mean, you used to hear about turf wars over it, and some are saying that it goes back to deals that were going on, cutting the turf up, 10, 12 years ago. So I was just curious about that. Thank you.
You got it.
Mr. Chair, there's a question from Carol that's in the chat room. Would you like me to share that question, or if Carol is still on, she can ask it directly?
I have to unmute. Yeah, the question I was asking was whether what's going on is random, or is there some kind of strain of organization, not necessarily formal, but the youth and the other people being in a social and a community kind of their own, so that they are not part of the community itself, but they've got an organizational thing going on, either formal or informal.
So what we're seeing, and these aren't random. And as far as you saw, then you're referencing organization. If these are organized groups, is that basically what you're saying?
Not really organized in the sense of an organization, but loosely connected so that they are familiar with one another.
I think that's a fair statement. Yep.
I also see Danielle Hilly's hand back up for an additional question. Mr. Chair, if you'd like to acknowledge her.
Yes, Ms. Hilly, and then we'll get Dr. Pleers on.
I just have a follow-up. How the cadet program that you've now mentioned a few times, how many spots are there for that? Is that full-time, part-time? What does that cadet program bring to the table in response to jobs, in response to proactivity?
There's 4 spots, part-time. It'll be 12 hours a week. And so that's 4 jobs of hopefully future police officers. And then they can also spread the word in the neighborhood of some more positivity and help with recruitment, which again will help out with being able to recruit good police officers, which will help quell some of this violence, and hopefully they're from the community.
Dr. Dorcia, please, Chief City Auditor.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Few questions, comment, and a comment also. Question initially to you, Kelly, as the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I know that in our talks with the equity agenda legislation that was passed, the intent was to convene a violence prevention task force each year. And I know that it takes time to implement legislation. So just was trying to get a sense of, just in terms of planning for next year, because we know that there's an uptick in violence every summer. I know since I've been on the council, we find ourselves having this conversation every year. And we had this conversation last year and the year before. And while the implementation of that legislation won't necessarily address where we are in this current moment, but just in terms of planning, the idea was to get ahead of it so that we engage elected officials, faith leaders, community folks, youth, so that we have a plan going into the summer. So that's my question for Chair Public Safety. The other question is, David, and I don't, for you, David, in the legislation, it also talks about a budget line in which funding would go towards boots on the ground violence prevention initiatives, and that there would be a community participatory process so that the community weighs in on how those funds are spent in the community. Have you all, given that we are upon budget season, has there been a conversation about the funds that will be allocated for that particular, for this initiative that we're speaking of, the violence prevention work? The question that I have for Councilman Robinson and Johnson, and you all are talking about the configuration of streets, and I just reflect on my experience on the council, in which I know Councilman Mark Robinson had brought before the council legislation to adjust some of the one-ways in the neighborhood, in the Fifth Ward in particular, because there was a sentiment from neighbors that historically they have had to bear the brunt of people coming in from outside of the community, copping drugs, individuals who were engaging in drug activity and violence that really made the whole neighborhood suffer, and it was an inconvenience because there, as a result, there were so many one-ways in the Fifth Ward to prevent people from being able to jump on the highway. And so I know that there were community members who came out in support of changing some of what was instituted historically. Are you all hearing, and I know Councilman Johnson, you said that you heard from a community member, but is that the general census of the community that, you know, these changes need to be made? Which is, again, going back to that initial conversation, there were community members who felt that they had to be punished because of individuals engaging in behaviors that did not represent the larger community. Last comment, and this is to the Deputy Chief. I was listening in on a community-led conversation about the violence, and one of the things that members from the community said that was a little disturbing was that we keep, and I've been guilty of this, blaming not the whole issue on COVID, but we talk about COVID as if it played a major factor in what we're seeing. And the reality is this isn't new. And so isolating COVID, we've seen this, like I said, since I was on the council for about 6 years, and every year, now some years we saw a higher spike, but there's been a consistent, significant amount of violence every summer. So I think we also have to be clear about what the factors really are. And if we're saying it's, you know, COVID is playing a factor, like clearly how are we making that connection? Because we've seen this before. So I just put that out there because I can understand why community members who are living in the communities disproportionately impacted by the violence are saying, let's not scapegoat what we're seeing on COVID, when in fact, this has been happening systemically in our neighborhoods for a long time. Those are my questions and my comments.
I'll go first, since the question was for me first. The violence prevention committee we're supposed to put together as a part of the equity agenda. We're working on it. I've had staff working on putting something together because I think there's a consideration of the gun violence and, you know, restarting the gun violence task force that from years ago, but that was a totally different animal than what the equity agenda called for. to be created. So it's in process. I hope to have it up and running by next spring. And folks in position. I mentioned it to the mayor at our last leadership, maybe 2 leadership meetings ago. So we're working on it, okay, to answer your question.
Okay, just to be clear, that's working on the gun violence task force specifically, or the larger violence prevention task force?
Mr. Chair, you're still muted.
Oh, sorry about that. The larger violence prevention, because it would encompass gun violence. So that's what we're working to try to get in place.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And as you know, I'm here if you need me with that to assist in any way.
Thank you.
I'll touch on the your question in relation to COVID. You know, I think we can point to COVID as a major impact on our shootings, because you're right. There is every summer we see with the increase in temperature or whatever the situation is, everybody out of school, we do see that spike in crime in the summer months. But looking at our 5-year averages, they're dramatically higher, and this is occurring around the state and around the country. So, and when you look at month by month, there's a significant jump once we hit April, May, June, and July, and it's definitely an outlier compared to previous years. For example, year to date, from January to June, compared to 19 to 20, we had in Albany, in 19, we had 0 individuals killed by gun violence. The 5-year average from 15 to 19 was 2, and in 2020, we had 5. Shooting victims, so these are people hit by a bullet. 5-year average from 15 to 19, 2015 to 2019, is 15. Last year, we had 13 hit. This year, we had 65. So, I mean, without doing a further analysis, this is just you know, quick off the top of my head, or looking at just a breakdown right here. I don't see how you couldn't conclude from that COVID doesn't have a significant impact on our numbers. Shooting incidents involving injury, 5-year average 14. That's from 15 to 19. Last year we had 13. This year we had 49. So obviously that's not just COVID, because we had a lot of other things happen over the past several months that impacted a lot of things. But if you look at the timing of everything, COVID definitely had a dramatic impact on our numbers and our police operations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, thank you. And you, when you were giving your remarks, you talked about some examples of that. What's the link being made?
Yep.
Can you clarify that?
The link being made is just the timing of it. I mean, these numbers are numbers that I haven't seen in my 20 plus years here. They're also occurring throughout the United States, throughout the state. They're seeing the same pattern of time where you see April, COVID hit, you know, gets in full effect, and, you know, sometime around St. Patrick's Day. And then we see the increase. And I'm connecting it because I know our police operations were severely impacted because we couldn't, you know, they were limiting contact. People were now at home and not able to do other things to keep them occupied. Stress levels were increasing. The lack of police proactivity because of COVID resulted in resulted in more opportunity for people that engage this behavior to flourish. And the numbers, you know, in my opinion, the numbers definitely show that. And like I said, we could do a more in-depth analysis on it, but I would use the timing, the numbers, and then compare it to previous years as my evidence of COVID having a significant impact on our crime numbers and shooting specifically.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt. There's some members that are, they mentioned that the raise your hand feature is not working. So you have Ivy Morris who wishes to share a comment or ask a question.
Ms. Morris.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Danielle. I learned how to, mine was working, so thank you.
I'm sorry, Ivy. I was waiting on 2 responses. One from David and one from Councilman Robinson and Johnson.
Okay. This is Councilman Robinson. Dr. Player, about 2 weeks ago, I believe last week, I had a neighborhood association meeting, and when we talked about the issue of violence in West Hill, that conversation and topic was brought up regarding the traffic patterns leading in and out of the West Hill, Arbor Hill neighborhoods. And the consensus at that meeting was that the one-ways people felt that one-ways do contribute to people feel like and they can easily access the community and jump back on a highway and get to where they need to go. So it is still an issue that the community feels needs to be resolved or looked at. Hopefully that answers your question.
So the community is saying that the one-ways as they are now are contributing to people being able to come in, engage in violent activity, and then jump on the highway and leave?
Yes, that, like you can go a portion of go up 3rd Street. That's the one-way street, but then you can, hit Quell and then go down 1st Street, and that First and Quell Street area is one of the most violent portions in the district. And same thing for 2nd and Judson. You can go up 2nd and Judson and go around First and Quell and come back down, and the highway's right there. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and the point that I was making was just based on the historical conversations with Councilman Mark Robinson. There was a sentiment that people in the community felt that they were, because of some of the strategies that were put in place, because of issues such as this in the past, the larger community felt that they were being inconvenienced because of the redesign. And just wanted to be mindful as we talk about how to implement strategies moving forward is done in a way, and it sounds like you're getting community senses, is done in a way that the larger community doesn't feel that they're being punished and inconvenienced in their own community because of the actions of a few.
Hello?
I can hear you, Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, so part of I agree with the first part of the points that you were making, because if we remember in December or January of this year, I was talking about a gun problem. We had several guns taken from, I think it was 15 down to as young as 12 years old. So when you hear the COVID talk, it gets kind of depressing and it gets defeating, because, we're not talking about how we're going to, move through this. People are looking, when they come to meetings like this, when they listen to us talk about gun violence, they're looking to hear us talk about proactive approaches. And, I see some comments about we need to be reactive, but the city needs to show reactiveness towards this stuff before it gets to this point. And so I was just saying about, and in support what Councilman Robinson is saying, is that, in the past, the nature of what we were dealing with is different. Now, like the chief is pointing out data. He's using data points, but we live in these communities, so it's error in the data, but it's no error in the days and the nights that we live in our communities and the experiences, that you face personally. So, when you talk about, and when we talk about things changes, it's like we get hit with, we'll do a study and see, if that works, instead of listening to the community who knows, who saw this act in real time. They're knocking down buildings in our community, but they don't realize that some people are parking their car on one street and they running through the cracks in those buildings, and they going over there and they shooting and they running back to their car and they driving off. So, like real time in our community looks different than people coming, after something happened. It doesn't look the same for the people who experience it. So, when we get feedback from people that are experiencing it, I think that it's a great time for us to show that their input is valuable and, respond to it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Just to follow up on Dr. O'Pleers's question, we're still in the very early stages of crafting the 2021 budget. So we'll make sure that Mike Wheeler is cognizant of that provision in the equity agenda legislation to make sure that it's very clear what funds are being allocated to fulfill the requirement in the legislation about funding for violence prevention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan. We're back to Ms. Morris.
Yes, Ms. Morris.
Thanks. Thank you all. I just wanted to sign on to what Dr. Pleers and what Dr. Miller said. I think that for us to move forward and maybe get to a different place at this time, because we are in a different time, then maybe we need to really talk about resources for safe outlets for the young people in these communities, especially what we consider hot spots. I do think too that this is the time for us to kind of have those really hard conversations about why it is that there are hot spots as opposed to neighborhoods that don't have the same issues. So I'd really like to talk about how we maybe expand, because what I'm thinking about is to approach it from a harm reduction stance as opposed to a punitive stance. And I think Eva Bass was talking about that. How do we allocate funds to make sure that our youth is given safe opportunities, safe outlets for job opportunities, for after-school programs? I know COVID is going on, but while we're not able to meet, maybe we could think about the ways that we can smartly use funding to kind of be proactive, as we're saying, instead of reactive. So that was only my statement. I wanted to thank you for that. But one more thing, I'm sorry. One more thing is that I think that we also need to really, really consider the deep-seated systematic things that are in our system that we all deal with. In order for us to change this, we have to really talk honestly about the things that affect people differently in different neighborhoods. And that goes with gun violence, because I'm sure there's a lot of neighborhoods that don't experience that. So why is that? So I think I'd be willing, as Dr. Miller said, as Dr. Pleer says, as Eva says, and the rest of you, to let's think about a way that we can maybe be more creative and think about the sources that lead to the violence for these young people. Thank you. That is really it. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Joe Njame, please forgive me if I'm saying your name incorrectly, has indicated that he has a statement question as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he was going to be next, but just to Ms. Morris's point, that violence prevention section of the equity agenda was built to deal exactly with those issues and making sure resources get to places to help stem the tide of violence and inequity. So I know you're finishing up on the board you're on. I'll be looking for you for the equity, for the violence prevention task force also. So get ready for that. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. and Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions and then a comment. One of the questions I had was with the chief. You talked about patrol and you talked about NEU and being out in the community a little bit more. I know NEU is just spread a lot thinner than they were before. The talk is that the patrol is joining in with them, but does patrol stay in a small neighborhood so they get to know that neighborhood, or are they spread around and moved around wherever they're needed? So that was one question for the chief. And another one was with the call-ins. I was involved in that in the very beginning, and they started with just parolees coming out of prison. Does that also now include probationers or other persons at risk? Because I agree with you, a lot of very strong comments and very, speeches that are made and talks that are made really do get to you, but what is the target? Are you targeting people who have the potential for this, or just people that are coming out of prison? You should be bringing in some younger people. That's my point, especially probationers or other people at risk. And you can get to those answers, but I want to make one comment, and this might be showing my age here, but when I first got out of school, my first job was running a small neighborhood youth center on Elberon Place. And in that youth center, it was a drop-in. And that was one of the advantages, because you have kids coming in that had no place else to go. So we got involved with the after-school work, we got involved with a lot of other things, and got involved with the needs of those kids and their families, because it was just in that one little neighborhood. It was a very cost-effective way of doing it. I was the only full-time employee, and believe me, I wasn't making much. The others, we had part-time seat employees and volunteers coming in to work with these kids. And sometimes we get anywhere from 30 to 50 kids in a night. So that, again, just in that one small neighborhood. And I think that's the type of thing that you really need, is programs and focusing on small neighborhoods to bring kids in and give them someplace to go. Again, like it was mentioned before, you used to have the YMCA, you used to have the, the Boys Club was very active. You had organizations and places like that for kids to go. And once they get there, then you identify some problems and make referrals. So I think that's a way for long-term help to address some of these problems. Thank you.
Yep, so getting to, thanks, Joe. So getting to your question about the call-ins, yeah, probation is involved. It's probationers, parolees, and I think, unfortunately, that's the best way to get everybody there is through those resources. So that's how we get those that population there. I don't know if it's open to any other population, but yeah, federal probationers. But it's definitely probationers are there, so we can try to capture that population as well as the parole population. So like I said, yeah, we're going to try to get back to doing those because they are effective, as you stated. And then to your question on the officers and if they're assigned to the neighborhoods under that new team policing concept, which I shouldn't say is new. We've done it before. We're getting back to it now. We're trying to focus where they're assigned more to that particular neighborhood more often. It's not a perfect system. Depending on scheduling, you may not always achieve that, but we're pretty close in achieving that, where the officer will know the neighborhood that they're working in and they'll work hand in hand with the NEU officer.
Okay, if I could have one follow-up then. With the call-ins, it did start with just with parole. I'm glad to see probation involved in it now, but what other, couldn't you have other community referrals like from SNUG or some other community agencies that are identifying at-risk people so they can hear this message?
Yeah, that's something we can discuss with, maybe I'll get with Katie, we'll get with the national network and go over their model and see if it fits with their model. But again, this is based on David Kennedy's research and everything. And, it's an evidence-based system. So we'll have to get with them and see how that fits in. But I mean, it's that's a good, you know, that's a good recommendation.
You were muted, Joe. You were just saying thank you.
Just saying thank you.
Just to piggyback on Joe and Jim.
And so when we look like we got our shit together, we're gonna see.
Hello? Yes, I just want to piggyback on what Joe and Jimmy were saying. You know, years ago we had a lot of teen centers in the schools. They just fell apart. But it might be an easy way. You have facilities. If we get something like that going again, being drop-in centers, and I know it'll be difficult with the COVID because we're having a hard time opening up the schools itself, but it's something I think we have to start looking at in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Igo. So,
I believe Mr. Chair, Councilmember Robinson had his hand up too. I'm not sure if you were able to see it.
I can't see it. But Mr. Robinson?
No, no more questions.
And Danielle Hilly has her hand up as well.
Okay, Ms.
I just
Hilly.
have a question for clarification. Actually, I have two questions for, well, one's a follow-up. I was hoping that that Council President Ellis would ask again, but when is the report for lead going to be available? Because it's been some time since we've had a report, and I'm interested to know what those lead diversions look like as well. And the second one, so we had call-ins in previous years. We had call-ins during 2018 when we had the highest number of homicides in several years. Are you guys finding that most of the people that you arrest are formerly incarcerated or on probation previously? And like, are we seeing arrestees who don't have that same kind of interaction with the criminal justice system? Because if we're seeing a mix, we're missing half of the shooters.
So on the lead report, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I'm gonna have Lieutenant McDade follow up on that and see if there is a report generated, and then we'll get that to you. So I'll have Lieutenant McDade follow up with you on that, Danielle, okay?
Thank you.
And the second part of your question was whether or not the individuals involved in the shooting violence been involved in the criminal justice system before. And without having every victim listed in front of me, I would say that the significant majority have had previous contacts with the criminal justice system.
Of the victims or the shooters?
Both.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay.
He's got the ring.
Okay. Yeah. So what I would like, as we wind down, to do is, Mr. Brown, you're on here from SNUG. I mean, I know you're out there on the front lines of this. Would you like to add to the conversation or speak? Mr. Brown? Jerome? Okay, maybe he's not there. And I would say, Commissioner Jones, I mean, you have.
Hello?
Oh, I think Mr. Brown is on. Mr.
I'm
Brown,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, yeah. So you want to speak to us? Just tell us. I mean, you're out there on the front lines. You're doing this work. Your voice should be heard.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I was invited to this meeting. I'm actually in Troy right now at an event, but I definitely wanted to listen in as much as I can. And I heard a lot of things everybody was saying, and I'm glad people did mention, you know, the YMCA. I'm glad people did mention getting more things for the youth to be involved in. And that's one thing for us, you know, like we just finished up a program with CYT, and which is Connecting Youth in Transition. And I felt like this was it was a very important program to be able to get the youth involved, and the youth was getting a stipend, you know, and that's one reason why I got on a call late, because Rensselaer County right now got a grant going on that ends today, and we wanted to get it in so we can get some of the Troy youth over here involved as well. So I'm working on both sides. We were able to build from the GIVE grant, we were able to build a partnership with Albany Police and Troy Police, and I meet with them once a month in a joint meeting, which was a meeting that used to be separate, and it wasn't no participation from the Troy side, but I was able to go there, knock on the door, and make that connection. So one of the detectives meet with me and Katie Clark every month, and you know, we share valuable information with each other. Well, they present us with valuable information about who's out there, who's known, or who's coming home. And that's one of the main things that we see, a lot of people that's coming home. And I'm sorry, because they're on the mic in the background if some people can't hear me. And I also wanted to talk about our social worker component, because this has been a very strategic part of our dealing with the youth right now, having them meet with our social worker, have our social workers meet, let me walk down some, having our social workers meet with the family, because when we first started, SNUG been going on for years, but we were only able to deal with that participant or that perpetrator. And now by dealing with the social worker, we can treat the whole family and be able to see what the needs of the family are. I just wish we can do something more about this social media. And, you know, we meeting families who house been shot up 2-3 times. And of course we know if they can't identify nobody, that, you know, ain't much the police can do, but we've been working with these families, trying to provide extra funds for them to be able to move, trying to assist them with OVS applications. We just dealt over here with Troy and Albany with 2 homicide victims, so we were able to assist with the OVS application and help them get the funeral paid for as well. But we just looking for different ways to partner, and we also I know they got passes on patrol. I also went there and spoke when the chief was there, and actually was able to get more collaboration, because the clergy is one of the things that we've been trying to connect with. And I believe from that meeting we went to, some people seen it, how the clergy came out on First and Quail and even though I was in training, they was able to provide a profound impact at that shooting response. So that's a little bit more, we're happy to see that the clergy is coming out. And if we can just provide more stipend programs. Yeah, we have the SEAT Center who we sending people to. They just opening back up a new class in September. But now the culinary class has shut down. And, you know, everybody don't take into coding as much, but that culinary class was an important class because, you know, it's teaching people how to feed themselves, and they get their GED and stipend. And yeah, we're just looking for more collaboration and different ways to get the community involved. I'm actually got a meeting with Crossgates Mall tomorrow, you know, so we can try to help stop some of the stuff out there. So we try to network and get our tentacles in as much as we can, but you know, we're only so much. So I don't want to keep talking. I want to give other people opportunity to talk, but was any question directed at me besides that?
Yeah, no. Did anyone have questions for Mr. Brown? I just thank you for that. You enlightened us, and we know you're out there doing the work. And I would argue that if we can get the violence prevention task force together, and that any funding that might be allotted to that, I would argue could be used for some of the purposes that you outlaid to help stem some of the violence. So we'll take a look at that moving forward. And then I'll be talking to you. You have access to the council. In any way we can help you, let us know. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
No more questions? No questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for taking the time. And then I'll just give Mr. Jones an opportunity. Mr. Brown was just talking about programming, and we know programming aids and helps in stemming some of the violence. It's activities for kids. It's enriching. It's all those things. Anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, just first and foremost, this affects me personally. I've lost brothers, I've lost cousins, lost uncles to gun violence. So half my body is inked up memorializing this. So this is a personal thing for me. And last year, when Dr. Appliers called the meeting at Green Tech, we were able to work in the city to find funding to support that program at Green Tech afterwards. And then I'm just going to touch on a few things. There's preventative, there's restoration, and then there's some exploratory stuff I want to talk about. The first thing being the preventative stuff. So one of the things we have is the program that Jerome Brown talked about at the C Center was funded by the Department of Youth and Workforce Services, as well as the Boys and Girls Club had some funding for that. So the culinary and IT at the C Center, and then at the Boys and Girls Club, it's about music production and programming. That's going to be starting up soon, but that's only for 16 to 24-year-olds in and out of school. The other thing is My Brother and Sisters Keeper. President Obama started that in 2015, and we adopted that. Right now, we have 35 people that went through that program. That is for out-of-school youth who have not been in school for a while and have some type of interaction with some agency. Most of those referrals either come from SNUG or from some of our foster care system providers. And then the Compass Rose, which is for folks who are reentering our community back. We have 46 people in that. There was stipends that were provided in that. And then let me talk about some of the exploratory stuff. Through the federal dollars, this kind of goes back to, I think it was Ms. Morris's comment about stipends and doing more with federal flexibility in dollars. We can provide stipends. It's called OJT, on the job with businesses. It's almost like somebody gives you an internship, you're paid on that for 8 weeks, and then you end up working at the business long term. The challenge is, and I'm gonna be just completely honest about it, the challenge is the parent engagement. When we're working with kids younger than 16, we need parents to support and get the documents and the paperwork in order for us to use this money. That's just something that is put into the regulations of the stipends and the regulations of the programs. And then the last thing is about the tuition assistance. If someone is interested in going to school for something, whatever that may be, they can come into our office at 175 Central or 382 Clinton, and they can come in, and because of WIOA, there is no extra paperwork stoppage that you need to do or targets you need to meet. If you want to identify training and you're eligible, we can put you in a training. Now, I'm not blaming COVID because we have not stopped providing services since March 13th. However, the reality of the training providers is there's very few that are offering training right now because of COVID. So I believe that, after September 14th or maybe September 29th, after schools open up, that more training providers will open their doors, and we'll begin to work with that. The unions have been more open to working with us. We had a meeting about a week ago. So some of those construction jobs, as well as the Port of Albany, has been open to the idea of creating a pipeline to those organizations and to get people working. Those are good paying jobs. Everyone's seen Amazon and their push there. And one of the big pieces that we were hoping for was the census. We all know where that is now, and the government decided to cut it back by a month and then scale down our regional approach there. But I say all of that just to say that at the end of the day, in our department, we like to hire the people who live in the community. So that's everyone on our staff lives in the city of Albany. And then secondly, the biggest piece about it is that we need parent involvement and we need parent support in order to work with our young people younger than 18 if they're not emancipated. So those are the two things there. And then lastly, on the community centers, we hope to be reopening. The governor's provided some information. We're going to work with our staff now that summer camps is over and summer youth. We're going to figure out a way to open up or be a little creative. For example, the boxing gym, the governor has, made mentions about what type of ventilation systems you need. So how can we be creative there? Can we use a multi-use space like Swinburne Ice Rink for 8 weeks and move the rink there, have a boxing class in the community still, but at the same time, be socially distant and have the right ventilation to work with people.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Eva Bass has a question, and then a comment from Councilwoman Jody Duche.
Okay.
My question was answered.
Thank you. Mr. O'Shea?
Thank you. I appreciate hearing about the drop-in centers and the programming that the city is trying to do for our youth, and I understand that there are challenges. As I'm listening to the conversation, I'm recalling my time on the school board, in which I had a great level of frustration that we could not get essentially universal after-school programming or an extended school day minimally through 8th grade. I would prefer to see through 9th grade, helping students develop good homework skills, good social skills, and making sure that our children are supervised and feel cared for and are learning those other lessons that we want them to learn, other than the lessons that they learn when they're out on the streets or on their own. When we talk about what's the difference between our community and many other communities that do not have a high level of violence, I really think a very significant difference is that wealthier communities, the children have camp during the summer, virtually every week. They have programming, every week. They have after school supervision of some sort, whether it be parents or an after school program that people are paying for, etc. So many of our children are missing that. And we really shouldn't be having our children out on the streets or unsupervised when they're 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. It's an opportunity for a lot of problems. And so that is something, we also, when I was on the school board, I was advocating for universal pre-K, and we eventually got that with some additional assistance in funding. And this is perhaps even more important, I think, than universal pre-K, is making sure our children feel cared for, feel safe, are supervised, are being continued to be taught life skills from the end of school till when their parents pick them up for dinner time, or somebody else picks them up for dinner time. And so that's, I wonder if one of our goals as a community working with the school district shouldn't be that we have universal after-school programming for every child through the age of 14, and camps and summer programming for every child, and actually essentially require parents to enroll their kids in those programs to make sure that they have that kind of supervision unless the parent is at home or the other guardian is at home and they have other specific plans. Something I think that we should be thinking about. Thank you. That's my comment.
Councilmember Robinson and then Dr. Dorsey-Pleers.
Yes, just one final question from me to Officer Donahue. Chief Donahue, is he still on?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Okay. So the question for me is with the Back to the Give program. Does that program have social workers on staff? And if not, is that something that the department would look at implementing, so that if an officer or someone responds to a call, that social work can be on standby to provide any services or resources necessary?
Currently, that's not, we don't have anything like that with the GIVE program, and that's something that would have to be discussed at the state level through GIVE.
Okay, but it is a possibility for the program to fund that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we had discussion with them and we could tie it into gun violence, which I think we definitely could. Mm-hmm. I think they'd be open to it, but we'd have to speak to the state and see how we could get that implemented.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea.
Okay, we'll get Dr. Pleers on and then we'll finish up.
Thank you. I just wanted to, and I'm sure Jerome is busy, but I appreciated his comments. And I want to recognize that even though we are all living through this, we are a few steps removed from it. And we have people like Jerome who is, and his team, who are in this day in and day out. He talked about some of the grants that their organization is able to benefit from right now and help the community. Is there an opportunity for, and we don't have to answer this question right now, but from a city perspective, David, and I'm picking on you too, and I don't know if we're already supporting their efforts in some way, but can we have a conversation about, we're talking about the problem, but actually putting some dollars behind it, some resources, in lieu of not having the monies budgeted for this particular year. But is there an opportunity to support the work that they're doing right now, since we are in the midst of a crisis and they are building the car, driving at the same time, putting out fires, and so just putting that out there to all of my colleagues on the call. How can we support their work, whether it's through public funding, but also our networks, private funding? Can we tap our resources, our networks, help to raise some money? Everybody is talking about the city of Albany and scratching their heads about, oh, this is a damn shame. But the question is, what you gonna do about it? And so I'm happy to volunteer myself to help with raising some money to help the work that they're doing right now in the midst of this crisis that we're dealing with. So I put that out there to everybody on the call, looping you in on that as well, David. The other thing, it was just a comment to Councilwoman Dorchette's, in relation to the Councilwoman Dorchette's comment, and I do agree that there is an absence of a multitude of opportunities in some of the communities in which we're seeing a lot of the violence. But, that's a surface, is my personal opinion, a surface issue given some of the deep-seated issues that we haven't even begun to touch the surface on. and Ivy was talking about this and going back to the implications of racism and the lack of investment in these communities. And honestly, I think back to a few years ago when Commissioner Jones chartered a bus to take kids up to, I think it was Syracuse University, to learn different skills, and great opportunity. The bus was half full, not even half full. And I personally had to go to my mentee's house who lives in my ward, and I talked to her grandmother about the program. She said, you know, there was a few things, but she was scared about sending her baby away, you know. So there are a lot of different issues. Even if you have some of the resources in place, there is some hesitation at times with community members sending their children to participate in some of these programs. I had to physically take the application, walk it to their home. I had to physically fill out the application. Grandmommy could not fill out the application. And so it was my mentee who actually helped me fill out the application on her behalf so that I could submit it. And then I had to really stress to her grandmother the importance of her being able to take advantage of this program. And I think we have to have those kinds of conversations, because we can create all the opportunity in the world, and we can't mandate parents to do things. So we got to be honest about the barriers that keep communities that we're talking about from engaging in these opportunities. And it's not just because they're not there. There are a multitude of factors. So I encourage us to go deeper when we're talking about our communities, because it's bigger than some of the conversation that we're having. We can't even fathom some of the dysfunction that's happening in some of the households of the kids that we're talking about, because it's not our personal lived experience. And so we can talk until we're blue in the face, but we have the privileges that we have, and we can't even wrap our head around some of the issues that our community members are dealing with. So these conversations can't happen in a vacuum, and the solutions aren't just this group talking, because we are not the answer. We don't have the answers. And we need to be sensitive to, you know, the depth of the challenges that the neighborhoods are dealing with. So I felt it was important to say that.
Thank you, Dr. Ayers. So in closing, really the meeting was, you know, about discussing recent gun violence and developing the plan. I think this is a good start. We're talking the conversation we had here. There are a lot of dots popped up, and myself as public safety chair and my committee, the public safety committee, I'd like to see us connect some of those dots. I'm going to reach out to Dr. Miller the beginning of next week. Mr. Brown, have a conversation with him and some of the other folks on the call that are doing things to try to pull folks together in this work. And my thought is every little bit helps, and the time is now. So that's what I'll be doing as a result of this meeting. I'd like to thank APD, your Deputy Chief, and the Lieutenant for being with us and sharing, Commissioner Jones, other chairs of our committees, for the time you put in when you're not here, and for being here. It's a Friday, and you all committed to this. It's very important that we deal with this issue. It affects us all. Not safe for someone in the North End isn't safe for someone uptown, and you know, when you talk about crime and property values, anything happening in the city impacts everyone, and lives are being lost, most importantly. I take away from what a few people said, and Dr. Miller said. He was talking about not that we're reactive and being proactive. And I know the last time we had this conversation, Dr. Miller, and Dr. Clears, and folks got together and made some stuff happen and came up with some programming. And my takeaway from listening to Dr. Miller was, as soon as he said it, I just wrote, do something in the big 3 exclamation points. After it, we really have to keep moving on this issue and keep doing things, because lives are being lost. And not only that, I mean, families that are afraid to allow their kids to go out, it's impacting our lives as much as COVID is. So that's all I had. And what I would like to do actually is end in silence, out of respect for the 13 lives that were lost here in the city to gun violence. With that, everyone, be safe and have a good night.
Good night, you guys. Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.